I'm currently a Year 2 teacher and I've taught for many years across the primary phase. These wrinkles are showing my age. But my contact with you began last October when a boy in my class had a referral to you. And I've realised what an amazing job you do for children in our local area. I felt that he's changed an awful lot in the year since he became coming to see you. So I was really pleased that I could come and give you my thanks. Death and bereavement are words we often use. We talk of assisted suicide and palliative care, and they are regularly in the news, and yet we still as humans find it difficult to talk about death. I know only last week a parent in my class came up and said that the nan had died the night before, and I didn't know what to say, and I just did my usual nod and smile and say, don't worry, I'll look after your daughter. But it's so hard, and often people just cross the road because they don't have the words to be able to say, I'm sorry for your loss. So it's always very difficult. I remember my nan saying to me that when she was a child, death was part of life. Often children in class passed away. It's no harder now than it was then, but perhaps death was around us more often and people felt it was something they could talk about more freely. For children, when somebody dies in their family, they don't always know who to turn to because the people around them that normally give them support are also grieving, and it's very hard for them to find the words to comfort children and know what to do. So an organisation such as yourselves are the ones that can give that support to children when it's most needed. Most families move through pain without the need for professional help, but I do realise as a teacher that sometimes that we need to be able to find support in other areas. And it's great for me to be able to know that I now have a contact with you to be able to recommend to parents and other carers if the need arises. We need to be able to identify in school when bereavement or loss is affecting the children that we teach, whether that's a change in their behaviour. For some children, they become anxious, they become withdrawn. Others say things that are inappropriate or act in different ways. Other children, they take more time off school. So it's really important for us as teachers to know what signs to look for so that we can offer support whenever we can. At this point, I should say that I've got a bit of vested interest in this subject because my mother was a nurse and a social worker who specialised in palliative care, and she spent her life badgering me about what we do at school to deal with bereavement. And I have to admit, for many years, I ignored my mother's words of wisdom. She's also got her master's was in childhood bereavement, and when she was doing her master's thesis, she did sort of say to me, well, what have you done? What did you do for your training? And I just had to say, we did nothing. About 18 months ago, as a school, we held a session on bereavement, and a lot of us were in tears listening to the stories that were told. But again, you still feel inadequate when you're faced with that and the child that comes towards you. So my mother's words of wisdom are now ringing in my ears a little bit too late at times. She was never one, or is never one, to worry about boundaries and doesn't worry if she steps on other professionals' toes, which is perhaps not always the best thing in life. But she knows that sometimes you have to make a noise, you have to pound on doors to get what you need for people. And I'm listening to your details of the fact that you haven't had funding in Havering, I think is a real shame. And if someone was to ask me, I would say, give it 100% because I know the benefit that it can make. We all have to work together to help a child, whether to have a holistic approach to everything we do. I cannot do it on my own, and I need the support of others around me to help children through the pain and the loss that they're going through. I do a job that I love, but I know that there are times when I fail children and that I'm not there to be able to give them the support that they need. Sometimes it's because they ask you at the most inappropriate moment and you're in the middle of teaching a maths lesson and a child pipes up, my nanny died. And it's very hard to know how to react, especially if that's something that might have happened years before. And for some reason, your maths lesson or multiplication has sparked a memory for them. I don't know why, but it does. And you tend to sort of pat them on the back and go, there. But you then need to be able to find time, and I will admit I don't always have that time for them. They need a place like yourselves to be able to do it in a safe way. I had an experience a few years ago when I was a very inexperienced teacher that a child of in my class, her mother was murdered by her father. We were away at the time on a school trip and I was contacted by the police late one night to be informed of this event. I just didn't know what to do, and it's actually haunted me ever since that I let that child down. I subsequently taught her sister many years later, and still, even then, didn't know what to do. The father then went on to commit suicide, so the child and a family was very much affected. I wish now that your service was available then, because I would have known what to do for the rest of the family and for that child. And I do look back now wondering how that child is living their life now as an adult and whether they are constantly affected by what happened when they were just 10. I have a friend who was in not a similar position, but their father died when they were 1. Went through their infant school, very damaged, and displayed lots of disturbed behaviour. When their mother was asked, would they like counselling, she said no, because she felt her son would be labelled. Years later, he was very withdrawn, couldn't communicate with family, and it needed counselling as an adult in order to deal with that bereavement that he'd suffered. When you said that people say that children as young as 5 don't remember, he was 1 when his dad died. And a lot of what he talks about now is how he felt different to everybody else. He didn't have a dad to go and play football with him in the park, didn't have a dad to go and do all the things that everybody else did. It needed counselling as an adult to resolve those issues from when he was 1. If only his mother had taken that step earlier, I think he would be a different person than he is now. And certainly his troubled adolescence may not have happened. We often also forget that when there is a bereavement or loss, new families grow out of that, and that can also be very difficult. Step families appear and half-brothers and sisters, which for most times are all well and good, but they can also bring up other feelings that are hidden. So for some children, it's not immediately that they need the counselling, but it can be years later. Sometimes, when we talk about bereavement, it's the fact that parents are struggling with their own loss and they don't know how to deal with the children that causes most problems. I remember a conversation that was relayed to me of a child that was told that his much-loved nanny had gone away on a long holiday, rather than admitting to them themselves that the nan had died. Months later, after the child questioned when nanny was coming back and can I phone her, did they have to admit that nanny had actually died, but they didn't have the words to tell her. Now, truths or lies sometimes seem the best things to be told, but actually hide a lot of problems. As I've said, most teachers struggle to find the time and space to provide the individual attention that you can offer people. I know the boy that from my class that's part of your organisation needed that time and that space to work through his own grief, which I couldn't give him. So I think it's a marvellous thing that you can offer the time to do the playing and all the other activities that you give the children. And I am very, very grateful that I can place in your care the children that I refer on to you, because I think it's good to know, and it was good for me to have somebody at the other end of the phone that I could talk to as well. We all bring our own views on bereavement into how we deal with other people's experiences, but it's not the same for everybody, and to say I understand can actually be the hardest thing for a child to hear, because you don't understand how they are feeling, and you need to be able to explore their feelings however they feel best. I'm just going to end on a bit of a lighter note, which my mother, as I said, has been involved in the profession of bereavement for a good many years, and even she recently had a scenario which didn't quite go according to plan. She was with my niece and my niece's friend Rachel, and both of them are 5. Reka's from Bangladesh, and it was the first time she'd been round to play. They were making bead bracelets in the kitchen, and beads were everywhere, and as children do, they were enjoying themselves. Reka said that she was going to make the beaded bracelet for her mummy, and then my niece just turned to my mum and said, "Great Nan is dead." Again, children just say things out of nowhere. But Reka replied, "She is in a very, very dark place." And she said this a number of times. Well, my mum, thinking I've got to do this sensitively, she's from a different culture, and she put on her professional hat of working with people in bereavement and started to think about how you can then get over this one. But while my mum was thinking about what to say, my niece pipes up with, "Is Great Nan's flesh rotting now?" Which, again, is what children will ask. My mum wanted to give a truthful answer, but recognised that that would mean explaining to two 5-year-olds about cremation. Didn't really think that round the table threading beads was the right place to be doing this. But she thought I must say something. Luckily, at that very moment, the dog leapt on the dining room table, beads flew everywhere, and the whole conversation was forgotten. The two 5-year-olds went off and did something else. But my mum, who has spent a good proportion of her professional life dealing with death, could only think, thank God for the dog. And sometimes I'm sure that's how a lot of us feel when faced with those situations. We look for the way out. I have to say that I congratulate you on the service you provide. I told the boy in my class I was coming today, and his face just absolutely lit up. He thinks of all you very fondly and the experiences you've given him. I asked him to tell me about some of the opportunities, and he bounds in regularly to tell me the things he's done with you, but the highlight were the West Ham players, and recently going to the CBB set was something else that he really enjoyed. He wouldn't have had those opportunities had it not been for your organisation, and it did give him the chance, and his mum's a chance, to spend time with other people of bereavement. And if anything, your service has been more important to his mum than to him, because I think she actually hadn't dealt with the bereavement in the family, and that then had a knock-on effect. So the two of them cannot speak more highly of what you have done for them in the past year, and my thanks is there as well. Your service is so vital. If we don't work on children's loss and bereavement at an early stage, their whole education can be affected. And I know some people would argue that we shouldn't be taking time out of the school day for such services, but in my mind, it's the most important thing we can do. And I would much prefer that somebody in my class missed half an hour or an hour of a lesson to come and speak to you than worry about how they were getting on with their maths and literacy. Because otherwise, they can spend the rest of their lives dwelling on things and not succeeding. It's also, as I say, finally, to say that it's given me the confidence to know what to do. As I said, I've lacked the knowledge in the past, but now I know who to call on. And through Isabel at school or contacting your service directly, I wouldn't hesitate in offering your service to somebody else. So thank you very much for everything you do.
Okay.
Thank you, Lucy. That was fantastic. Perhaps you'll join me in